With a new Defence Minister, we already have significant progress. You will recall, I've told you many times, the Blazer Brigade at the head of Defence, whether it's the Chief Campbell or the head of the Army Burr or whomever, they don't like taking instructions from civilian ministers. And that's why in the history of Australian government, our Defence Ministers have served for days, not years. And if years, with the exception of Senator George Pearce, way back during World War I, who served for 7 years and 95 days, Sir Philip McBride under Menzies served for 8 years and 47 days, and then Athol Townley followed him for 5 years and 8 days. After that, Sir James Killen for almost 7 years, and then Kim Beazley and Senator Robert Ray survived the Blazer Brigade. But since 1901, only 6 Ministers for Defence have made it for a period of continuous administration. Well, now, Peter Dutton's been there for 18 days, and we hope at this critical time on many fronts he'll be there to shake this outfit up. He's already done that. A Royal Commission into veteran and serving defence personnel suicides. It'll have a mandate to examine the systemic issues and common themes relating to past deaths by suicide by Australian Defence Force members and veterans, and it'll examine the experience of members and veterans who may continue to be at the risk of suicide. It'll also look at all aspects of service in the Australian Defence Force and the experience of those transitioning from active service. It will look at past, confirmed and suspected suicides. Hopefully, families will be able to stand up and share their stories as well. Peter Dutton has indicated emphatically that, quote, "We honour these young men and women and they will be wearing their unit citation medal with pride." Peter Dutton joins me from where he's visited the Special Air Service Regiment at Perth's Campbell Barracks. Minister, good evening. Thank you for your time. Congratulations on your appointment and thank you for breathing some hope into our soldiers. The Royal Commission, what can you say about that?
Well, Alan, great to be on the program. Thank you very much, and thank you for your support of our veterans and our veterans community and their families, but also of our serving personnel as well. Look, I've had an amazing visit to the SAS here in WA. It really fills me with confidence and pride, the level of skill, the expertise, the know-how, the capacity to protect and defend us in what will be an uncertain century. It should make all Australians proud, what we see here within the SAS, what they embody, and right across the Australian Defence Force as well. So from the perspective of the Royal Commission, obviously, we want to make sure that we take care of our people, not only whilst they're in the employ of the Australian Defence Force, but once they've separated and gone into the private world and getting on with their lives. In some cases, people can't get on with their lives, and families deserve an answer to know why. We've had way too many deaths in this country. We need to do all we can to build on the investment that's been made, but to better understand how we can help people, how we can answer some of the questions that will always remain for families. So the Royal Commission's incredibly important, and it's a very clear signal from the government to the defence veterans and to the community that we value incredibly your service and the way in which you've contributed to our country, and we want to pay respect to that.
I know you, and I know you do, but I know you'll also understand there's a high level of demoralisation out there post the Brereton Report. I mean, the head of the Defence, Campbell, said he was writing to the Governor-General to strip our Special Forces soldiers of their Meritorious Unit Citations. You can confirm, can't you, that that won't happen?
I've made a decision, Alan. I've been very clear about the fact that I want us to concentrate on the 99% of people who received that unit citation and the amazing work that they did in our name, in support of our country and in support of their allies in Afghanistan and Iraq as well. Now, there are some people who have done the wrong thing. There's a process to deal with that. And I don't demean or diminish the severity of some of that, and there are lessons that have been learned. But the most important thing now is for us to concentrate on the capacity of these young men and women who should inspire all Australians. We have the most, I think, able Defence Force in the world. The capacity that they bring to the Five Eyes nations, now to the Quad partners and to others in our region, should really send a fear down the spine, a tingle down the spine of our adversaries. And I've been clear that the unit citation will stand, and if people have been found to do the wrong thing individually, then they'll be stripped of it. But for the 3,000 who served and did so honourably, we should praise them, and we should, this Anzac Day, look at that medal, and with the families that are wearing it, be making sure that we tell them that we have great pride in the fact that they are wearing that on behalf of a loved one.
See, Peter, you would be aware that the power to remove these unit citations did not exist until the letters patent were altered on July 13 last year, 5 months before the release of the Brereton Report. The original letters patent didn't provide for the revocation of the citation. Now, the Prime Minister signed off to alter the letters patent well in advance of the release of the Brereton Report on November 19. Do you understand that vets believe this was all cooked up? Because what the Prime Minister signed off on July 13 last year, well in advance of November 19, gave power for the first time to the Head of Defence, Head of Army, Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister, the power to revoke the Meritorious Unit Citation from everybody. They had every intention of doing it, Peter. That's why the forces are demoralised. No one was told. Now, if anyone's committed a crime, of course, they are entitled to have the citation withdrawn, but they're also, aren't they, entitled to the full benefit of the law? That's not available to these men.
Well, the point, Alan, about the rule of law is an incredibly important one, and we all adhere to it. We live up to those values, and the soldiers here, the SAS, for generations now have been fighting to defend that rule of law and our democracy, and people are entitled to a presumption of innocence.
But they don't
There is
get
a
it.
process to go through. If there's sufficient evidence to prosecute, that will happen. And if the jury convicts, well, that's the way in which our rule
Peter,
of law
to interrupt
operates.
you,
But equally, as you say,
yeah,
sure.
I just want to interrupt you there because I'm worried. I'm worried, as many are, and I mean, you're a tough hombre, but whether you're getting appropriate briefing. See, 17 defence personnel, many of whom I've spoken to, have already been delivered show cause notices. I mean, people like Catherine McGregor and I are rallying around to raise money so they can have an appropriate defence. 8 have been dismissed. These people have had no access to the Australian courts of law. They were sent to war by government in an atrocious environment. Under the terms of their engagement, they've always had a partner force, a military special Afghan police on the ground. Each mission had to have approval from the Afghan government, the partner force. It's a 50-50 partnership. Have you been told, as the Defence Minister, that during the conduct of all the operations in Afghanistan, no reports were made by the Afghan partner forces of any atrocities of murdering civilians or farmers?
Well, Alan, a couple of points there. I mean, the first is that I've been the Defence Minister for 3 weeks. So my job, and I've been strongly supported, I've got to say, by the Prime Minister and the announcement that I've made today around the unit citation. Second point is that the allegations that may be there are able to be investigated by the Office of the Special Investigator, and there's a process now for that to take place. I want to make sure, and this has been the reason for my visit to Laverack, to the base there, to speak to the men and women on that base, as well as to the SAS here. I'm going back to Townsville on Saturday, and I'm going to Enoggera in Brisbane later this week. My message is to make sure that we concentrate on what is in the future. And we need to make sure...
We can't leave the past behind, Peter. 17 defence personnel have been moved on with show cause notice. 8 have been dismissed. Now, how do we know that the testimony against these people is not contrived? I mean, why did Brereton exonerate the Defence Force hierarchy? Why are the signatories to the Geneva Convention, which has adopted the Yamashita Standard, which asserts, quote, the highest ranking officer is accountable for and should be prosecuted and convicted of the crimes of every officer and soldier under his command. But Brereton conveniently finds that the commanders, which include Angus Campbell from 2011-12, were not accountable because they didn't have, quote, a significant degree of command and control to attack the principles of command responsibility. Yet people, Peter, have been sacked with no access to the courts. We're looking at you to say, hang on, we're going to have to review this.
Well, Alan, I think I've given a pretty good indication today of the reset that I want to see, and the Brereton Report was commissioned, did its work, and was delivered before I came into this portfolio. There are issues that I want to address, and there are serious allegations that have been made against some. And as you say, the rule of law needs to apply, and there's now a process set up through the OSI that can examine that information. It can dismiss matters, it can give clearance to people, and that is the proper forum for that to be considered. My job is not to be a judge, jury and executioner. My job is to make sure that I give support to the men and women of the Australian Defence
Yes.
Force. That is my sole focus. I want to make sure, as I've said before, I have their backs. I want to make sure that I can allow them to focus on that future, because the threats will be many and varied. We can be assured of that. And what I've seen today with the SAS, the capacity that they've got, our investment into technology, into space, all of this is the platform and the theatre of the 21st century. And we need to make sure that all of our soldiers, all of those right across the organisation, have a firm focus on that, because we shouldn't protect that simply because we're in a remote part of the world, that we aren't under a threat, or that we wouldn't be part of an attack or a campaign against us.
I understand that, but there's a high level of demoralisation out there, Minister, a high level of demoralisation. These people who've been asked to show cause have no access to the courts, and 7 have already been moved on and dismissed. Now, your government advertised in Kabul, this is long before you, for witnesses to come forward to incriminate Australian soldiers. And this report's been written from evidence that has never been tested in a court. Yet the Prime Minister apologised to the President of Afghanistan. Campbell, the Chief of Defence, tells us families in Afghanistan will be compensated. Will they be?
Well, Alan, in some cases, there are very serious allegations that have been made.
Yeah.
And they will be properly investigated by the Office of the Special Investigator. I'm not going to presuppose what outcome they might arrive at. I'm not going to, as I say, be the deciding body as some sort of quasi-judicial process around what evidence is admissible or it's not. All of that is properly left with Justice Weinberg and Ross Barnett and the others at the Office of the Special Investigator. I don't want to interfere with that process. At the moment, what I want to do is to lift the morale of the Australian Defence Force, and the response that I've had today, I've got to say, has been incredibly positive. The messages that we've had from around the country, from veterans, both serving and retired, has been positive, and I now want to continue that momentum.
No, look, there's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. I can tell you the personnel are very excited that someone like you is in the role. I'm just alerting you to the fact that there are people out there who've had no access to justice, and they've loved their country, they've served it faithfully, and with no opportunity to walk up the steps of a court of law, they've lost their job. The families are devastated. I've spoken to them. Mothers are saying, wives are saying, I'm no longer a wife, I'm a carer. My husband can't handle it. I mean, 600 troops since we went to Afghanistan in 2001 have committed suicide. I mean, how do you reach out to these bravest who came home from war, who are struggling enormously because of the way they've been treated?
Well, Alan, there's an incredible amount, and I spoke to some of the officers here today that have dedicated themselves to provide that welfare support. Yes. And there's also legal assistance. Anyone who has applied for legal assistance has received that assistance. That will continue as well. And we'll make sure that through the Royal Commission, we have the ability to hear the stories, to understand where mistakes have been made, and to learn from all of that, and to make sure that we can provide support to veterans. In some cases, families still haven't got the answers that they seek. And I hope that through the Royal Commission, we can provide that opportunity for the questions to be asked and for at least an attempt for the answers to be provided.
Peter, if your son had served loyally and faithfully at war, and suddenly you found a letter which said he was a PAP, a potentially accused person, which infers that he's guilty of an incident which could be passed on to the federal police, would you believe that your son was entitled to appropriate legal representation? And would you believe that he shouldn't have to go broke providing that representation? He was serving his country.
Well, Alan, of course, firstly, I'd be incredibly proud of his service. Secondly, I would want to make sure that if he had done the right thing, that he was provided with every protection, legal assistance, the support of the ADF and the support of the government. But if he had done the wrong thing, well, if he had done the wrong thing and there was an internal process which is quite separate to a court where you needed to find beyond reasonable doubt, then I would expect that he had signed up to the values of the Australian Defence Force. If he'd failed in living up to those values, then he would have a case to answer. If he'd committed a criminal offence like any other Australian, he would need to adhere to the rule of law, and he should be entitled to a presumption of innocence. And
but who pays for his defence?
Appropriate.
Who pays for his defence?
Well, the Australian government is paying for the defence now.
No, they haven't got. No, they don't have any. They don't have any. Peter, I'm telling you, they don't have any. Catherine McGregor and I are running around trying to raise money for these people to have defence. They've heard nothing from the Department of Veterans Affairs. One wife said to me yesterday, Defence has thrown us into the gutter. And then they got a termination notice from Defence at the start of December, just before Christmas, and they're gone. You're being terminated. I mean, families not even called before the Brereton inquiry received termination, kicked out of the Defence Force. No charge laid, no help.
Well, Alan, you bring those cases to me, because the advice that I've got is that people that have applied for the legal assistance, they've got it, and I'd want to see people with a proper legal representation. Good on you. So I'd be very happy to look at any of those cases.
Good on you. Good on you. I really thank you for your time, Peter Dutton. I mean, it's a hell of a burden you have, because you inherit what is, in fact, a mess. I mean, I mentioned to you the wife who said to me yesterday, I feel as though I have to pick him up, put him over my shoulder and carry him for the rest of my life. So, Peter Dutton, I hope we can talk further about this really critical stuff, because you can't defend the country if you demoralise people to the extent that they don't want to sign up. And I'm sure you understand that. Thank you for your time. Indeed. Good luck in your endeavours.
Thanks, Alan, so much.
There he is, the new Defence Minister, Peter Dutton. We're grateful he's given us his time. He has provided hope, I can tell you. I've already spoken to these people where families felt hopeless, and he's put a spring in the step of many veterans who up until now have not wanted to continue their journey through life. Where we go from here, who knows? We can't defend our country, as I said, if we so demoralise our troops that they no longer want to join up. And the big brass are going to have to be made to answer, I can tell you, and that's Campbell and Burr and the rest of them.